Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me this evening. My name is Toyin Davidson-ero, and I'm really proud to welcome you to another episode of Property Pillars. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, this is the only property platform where you will get the opportunity to speak to a property expert in the UK. It is a Facebook Live show. It's an interactive show, and we hope that you can contribute and enjoy. Property Pillars is an interactive opportunity, so do comment, do like, and do share for the benefit of those who are joining us for the first time. We come to you weekly with a variety of experts and have been doing so for almost a year and a half. Do check our YouTube page out, and you see on that YouTube page up to about 87 property expert interviews. Select your favorite, read, learn, be inspired, and take action. In addition to being a property production and marketing company, we also are a property consultancy business in the UK. And amongst the things we provide are litigation services, tenancy evictions, property sourcing for first-time buyers and investors, and any other planning issues. So do check our services out on our website, which is www.propertypillars.co.uk. In addition to that, I am proud to say to you that we have launched a Property Pillars Investment Club. Now, the Property Pillars Investment Club is a great place for you to come if you have a busy 9-to-5 schedule and you really would love to invest more in property, but you just don't know how. The purpose of the club is to bring together professionals who are interested in investing, and on that platform, you get the opportunity to network with those who have projects for you to invest in. So it's a great idea to come along to our next meeting, which will take place on the 28th of September on a Friday evening. We meet once a month on the Friday evening in London, and you're free to attend. There's a free attendance, and we'll be presenting to you another opportunity for you to invest into a project. Come along, it's free for those who are members, and to become a member is also free. You either put in your details in the comments below with your email address and your contact number, or send me an email and we will add you to our membership list. The email address for membership inquiries is propertypillars@gmail.com. Whilst I'm on the topic, I must tell you that one of the benefits of becoming a member of this great club is that you'll participate in a great thriving community of professionals who are accessible at your disposal. Hence the reason we have also launched a very interactive, beneficial WhatsApp group. Now, the WhatsApp group is doing remarkably well. You have lots of professionals on that WhatsApp group who can give you advice and guidance related to property. So become a member and become the thriving community benefits of Property Pillars. Now, let's start about our expert of the day. Our expert of the day is a gentleman called Nick Carlile. He's the owner and founder of Shepherd Cox, a business based in the UK. Let me tell you a little bit about Nick before I bring him onto the platform, and he will tell you a bit more about himself. I can tell you as follows, that Nick, having seen his father struggle in retirement from a failed pension, Nick started to invest in property in 1993. Having invested every year since 1993, he has focused on yield and every strategy he has adopted. He has bought £120 million of HMO property, 473 houses, 20 hotels, and a career started at the age of 19. Nick, with a keen desire to help anyone along their property journey, he's happy to share his real life experiences so that you copy and implement those experiences into your own business. So if you haven't got an expert in him, I don't know where you will find one, because that is an incredible accolade. And I'm really proud to have Mr. Nick Carlile onto Property Pillars today. Nick, a big welcome.
Evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, Toy, and thanks to everyone that's listening and viewing this evening. I appreciate you giving up part of your Sunday evening. I know there's lots of other things you could be doing this evening, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, for joining us as well. Now, Nick, in the years that you've been doing property, one of the things that you've said that a lot of people tend to ask you over and over and over again is, how do I find more deals? And how do I fund more deals? Which brings us to the topic of our Facebook show today. How do we find more property deals? I just want to start as a small introduction to those people who are watching. I do property investing, and like I couldn't agree with you more. The biggest challenge is finding deals and funding them. If you can overcome those major, incredibly major obstacles, then generally speaking, you're on your way. So I'm really here to learn from you as an expert, and I hope people are watching and taking down notes. So Nick, over to you. How do I find more property deals? Tell me.
Well, thank you, Toyin. I'm gonna rattle through a number of strategies that I've used over the 25 years of investing. So these are real things, and they add up. There's no one thing in this that will make there's no one thing that is the silver bullet, but there are a lot of things that you can do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that will see you at the end of the year with more deals. I guarantee it. So the first thing that I always say, because over 25 years, there's only really been those two questions. There's been, how do I find more deals, and how do I fund deals? And as you say, if you can kind of crack those top two questions, then you're on the way to a very successful property portfolio. The third question, which people tend to ask, which I tend to answer fairly quickly, is how do I run my property business, or how do I run the properties? How do I look after them? And my answer to that is that I don't. I employ other people that do that. I find experts to do that. But I want to focus on the first question, which is how to find more deals. And really, at a high level, I want to say that I've bought around about 750 properties in 25 years. And I can say with certainty that not one of those deals has landed on my desk wrapped up with a nice, neat package and a sticker on it that said, this is a deal. At a high level, the way to find more deals is not to find deals, but to create them. So you're looking for key ingredients with which you can create a deal. And so those things are motivated sellers. Those things are anything that's been on the market for a long time, anything that's complicated, anything that's stuck on a price, anything that's are overpriced. And I'll talk later about one of the strategies that I've adopted where we've bought overpriced properties to create deals. So you're not looking for, if you go into an estate agent and you ask the estate agent for a deal, this is the kind of deal that I'm looking for, it needs to be X, Y, Z, and be have all these component parts, you're probably not going to be successful. You need to hunt a little bit deeper and be a bit more creative. So that's kind of the headline answer to that. And I want to talk about a case study at this stage to illustrate the point. So that was I think my fifth slide in the presentation. So create, don't find the deals, as I said. Look for the key ingredients. And then I want to go on to this case study. Now, we currently, at the moment, we buy hotels. I want people that are listening to ignore the fact that these are hotels that we're buying. I want people to take the principles that I'm, because these apply to any kind of deal that you're looking for, whether it's buy-to-let, whether it's HMO, whether it's service accommodation, whether it's development deals. The principles on finding or creating deals are the same. This just happens to be a hotel. It's a recent hotel that we acquired up in the north of England. And this was a motivated seller, but the property was massively overpriced. And lots of people before had viewed the property and just concluded that it was overpriced. Now, the vendor had bought this property, he'd overpaid for it, and he'd overspent on the refurbishment. But he was fairly wealthy, and he was on a different time scale in terms of getting his money back. It was kind of almost a retirement project from his other business. He wasn't overly concerned about the money, making money in the short term. This was a more longer term project. But what happened to him was just as he was coming to the end of the refurbishment, he had a heart attack, and he was struggling with his health, and he was living a long way away, and he was trying to manage this property, and he decided that the best thing for him was to get rid of the property. Now, as a the money he paid for the property and the money that he'd spent on the property, it was overpriced. We came along and we said to Mike, look, the property's overpriced. He knew that, everyone had told him that. But what we're going to do is we're going to pay you the full asking price. so overpriced property. And instead of trying to beat him down on price, which is what everybody else had done, we said, well, actually, we're going to pay you the full asking price. We'll pay you the £1.5 million that you're looking for this property, but we're going to pay it to you in 5 years' time. We're going to do a lease option, which a lot of you will have heard of before. We don't use that terminology when we're talking to vendors. We try and break it down into simple component parts that they can understand. So we said to Mike, right, well, we'll pay you £1.5 million, but we'll pay it to you in 5 years' time. And in the meantime, we'll pay you £120,000 a year for those 5 years. And that 5-year term will give us enough time to get this property up and running, to increase the income and basically improve its value. So Mike walked away with his full asking price, with rent on a monthly basis that's paid, and we'd solved this problem. More importantly, we'd solved the problem of him convalescing at home. This property was 200 and so miles away. And what we got out of it was a deal that we wouldn't have ordinarily been able to buy because it was overpriced. And we got 5 years. We're now 2 years into that 5 years, and we're well on our way to being able to buy this property. So being creative, solving people's problems in property is a key strategy that has seen me do literally hundreds of deals in that way.
I like this case study particularly because in this current climate, just to elaborate, in this current climate where the property market is slightly subdued at the moment, and then people are having to compromise on the asking price, this sort of opportunity, as far as options are concerned, is a thriving. It's an opportunity for you to come up with this sort of strategy to help those owners who are trying to sell. So I really like what you've just said there. That really works nicely.
Yeah, I think when you're talking to vendors, you need to avoid the terminology that we're used to as property investors. So things like lease options, deferred consideration. You just need to break it down into very simple that non-property people can understand. And that's what we said to Mike. We said, look, we'll pay you full asking price, but we can't pay it to you now. We can pay it to you in a few years' time, but in the meantime, we'll pay you a rent. And that is an option. But when you go in with a lease option, people get a little bit concerned. They've not heard of it before. So is it dodgy? You know, their lawyer sort of talks to them about it being dodgy, but just explaining it in a really simple format really works. The next point I want to talk about in terms of doing more deals, and this is my next slide, is to do them on your doorstep. If you're going to be active, you can skip that one. Sorry, Toyin, next case study. The slide was hidden. So there is another case study in there which we can come back to. But the next strategy to doing more deals is to do them on your doorstep. So if you're going to be active in property, do them within 30 minutes of where you live. If you want to be passive, slightly differently. But there are deals to be done everywhere in the UK within 30 minutes. You'll make fewer mistakes by getting to know an area. It's much more time efficient. The time that you save from driving 200 miles up and down the country to view properties, to refurbish properties, to manage the builders, that time can be spent on doing better diligence, which will basically lead to fewer mistakes, which will basically lead to doing more deals. And more importantly, you'll build better relationships, because property, as we know, is a relationship business. It's not about the bricks and mortar, it's about the people in that business. And so building better relationships is a lot easier if you're on the doorstep. And then I talk to a lot of people about the local strategy. So I hear people talking about their strategy and they want to do buy to let or they want to do HMOs, but it doesn't work in their area. I think there's a strategy that is overlooked. I've not seen it taught anywhere, but it's the local strategy, where you basically do whatever kind of deal makes sense and makes money and makes financial sense within that 30-minute rule. So you might find one day a HMO, and if you don't do HMOs, you could lay that off to a HMO expert in the area. You might do a refurbishment project, you might do a quick flip, you might buy a property at auction. But by intimately knowing an area better than anybody else, you can trawl up all kinds of deals, and that I think is a very valuable strategy over and above just basically traveling the country and spending hours and hours in your car or on trains. And I think it's much better to do doorstep deals. So I like that point in terms of the next slide. So I live I live on the south coast near Southampton, and I live probably about 30 minutes from the most expensive place on the planet. A few years ago, I lived close to sandbanks, and what I do is I illustrate this point. So if you go on to Rightmove and you search within 30 minutes of sandbanks, so the most expensive place. So I hear a lot of people, I do this to illustrate to people that live in expensive areas that say, well, we can't find any deals. Within 30 minutes of the most expensive place, certainly in the UK, sandbanks, if you put into Rightmove properties up to £150,000, which is typically investor territory, I think the last time I did it, there were 73 properties. Now, I guarantee that within those 73 properties, if we were to look at those in detail, up to £150,000, you'd find a property flip, you'd find a property that was run down where you could refurbish it and make some money. You'd find a one-bedroom flat that you could maybe turn into a two-bed, or a two-bed that you could turn into three-bed and add value. You'd find a property, the one on the screen, for instance, where you could maybe extend it to the side. You'd find a HMO property, you'd find buy-to-let. So this idea that you need to travel hundreds of miles around the country to find deals, I think is nonsense. And I think that's where a lot of people waste a lot of time instead of just doing deals. Okay. My next point about finding deals is agents. And a lot of people are surprised when I say this, because a lot of people have this notion that they have to find off-market deals. Now, of the 750 or so properties that I've bought, 95% of them have come from estate agents. Okay, because the truth is they get most of the deals. And last 3.5 years, we've bought 20 hotels, 9 of which have come from a single agent. Okay, so this is about building a local relationship with the key agents. And even Rightmove will tell you, Rightmove will allow you to search for agents in an area, because we all know the big ones on the high street, but there are some that are maybe tucked away that you weren't aware of, and often they're more hungry to do deals, they're more keen to build relationships. So I would say avoid trying to find deals off market, because the truth is, where do you look for them if they're off market? The way off market deals is to do on market deals. So if you build enough relationship with key agents and you do some deals that are on market, they will give you the off market stuff before, or they give you stuff that comes across their desk before it comes to market. So 90% of the deals that I've done through estate agent. And then I see this a lot. I see this a lot on property courses where people say, oh, you've got to fake it till you make it. And I think that detracts from any credibility that you could build with estate agents. They see it a mile off. You don't need to go into an estate agent and say, oh, you know, we're property investors and this year we're going to buy 154 properties, because they take your card and they shred it the minute you leave the door. If you buy 2 properties from a single agent, you're already in the 1%, the top 1% of buyers, because most buy 1 property every 7 years. Whereas if you build a relationship where you just buy 1 property a year from that agent, they'll really look after you. So I would say avoid the fake it till you make it. And then moving on with agents. So what you need to do is you need to find the agency first. So whether that's William H. Brown or Spicer Hart or Foxtons or whichever the agency is. But this isn't about building a relationship with the agency, it's about the person. So the one that's given us 9 deals out of 20 in our hotel space, he's probably one of about 40 agents within that agency, but he's the one we've got the relationship with, and he's the one that rings us when he finds a deal that he thinks will work for us. And so it's about building relationships with specific people. And it's better, and this is really important, it's much better, it's much more successful to build awesome relationships with a small number of agents than to try and build mediocre relationships with them all. So you need 1 or 2 key agents on your side, on your team, who are going to filter the massive properties that they get, and they're going to send the deals to you. You're going to be the person that they call when they get something that is of interest that meets your criteria. And then when we bought 474 properties in and around Yorkshire between 2010, 2014. And for a lot of that period, what I did is I would just take agents out for lunch every Friday afternoon. I'd go into town and I'd try and sometimes this was successful, sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes they were busy, but just taking people out for lunch, not in a weird way, but just having some conversation with them about their business, about deals they've done recently, about deals that are coming up. They get to know you, you get to know them, and it builds rapport. And of course, they eat lunch every lunchtime, right? So there's plenty of opportunities to do that. My next point is about retaining agents. So I think we've skipped a slide there, but I'll talk about it. So you can retain an agent, not with £50 notes in a brown envelope. I'm talking about a formal agreement, and I've got copies of these kind of agreements. There it is. I've got these kind of agreements where which people can have, just simple agreements, just simple agency agreements, where you can say to an agent, look, these are the deals that I'm looking for, and if you find those deals, you can say to the vendor that they don't need to pay your agency fee because I will, and it's all done up front, it's all done above board. But that gives that agent maybe an extra benefit over some other agents when he's going to talk to vendors, because some vendors don't want to pay estate agency fees. And so if I'm paying the agency's fees, then the seller doesn't, and I just factor it into the deal. And that just allows me to have agents out there who are going to be slightly more incentivized to give me the deal than just basically flag it in their window.
I've got a quick question, Nick.
Go for it.
How much would you say is a good retention to give an agent?
Well, we try and match what agents typically get paid from a seller. So in the hotel space, that's somewhere between 1.5% and 2% of the sale price. So we typically pay 2%. We don't want to be arguing over a few pounds if they've got a cracking deal, because we know that we can factor that money into the deal, into our numbers to make sure that it works. So you're looking at somewhere between 1 and 2%, but this can be recurring business. The great thing in the hotel space is most vendors that are selling their hotels don't want anyone to know that they're selling, because they're worried they're leave. They're worried that brides won't book their weddings there. They're worried that events will cancel. And so this gives us an extra road in, because we can buy stuff truly off market through the agent direct, and it's completely discreet. My next point is about being in the deal flow. And so you have to be, this was a slide back, thank you. My numbers have gone a little bit skewed here, so apologies for that. But be in the deal flow. So you want agents, and this is where having a small number of really awesome relationships count. So I want agents, when they're viewing a property, or when a vendor rings up and says, look, the property's been on the market for a long time, we want to drop the price, or the agent goes and they just think, oh, this is just too complicated. I want them to be thinking, right, let's ring Nick, let's ring Nick, let's ring Nick. So if it's an awkward vendor, if it's complicated, if there's a motivated seller, if it's difficult property, if the price has reduced, if something's been stuck on the market for ages, I want them to ring me, because I can be creative and I can find deals where a lot of people just don't have the energy or the effort or the experience maybe to put that deal together. And I'm going to talk about how you leave offers on the table with what I call an OBE in one of my later points. My next point, which is very quick, it's a very quick point, is you've got to get out the office. So property isn't a sit behind a computer, mountains and mountains and mountains of research and trying to find deals online. That helps to a certain extent, but you've got to get out there, you've got to walk the streets, you've got to meet people, you've got to interact with people, and you've got to build those relationships if you want to do more deals. My next point is about paying full asking price. So most of the property courses, certainly over the last 10 years or so have been all about BMV, have all been about buying below market value. And whilst that's a very good strategy, and I wouldn't advocate paying full asking price in every case, this is a tool that you have to have in your kit bag when you go to view properties. And I've already talked about the property on the left. So this was the hotel where we paid full asking price through a lease option. We paid it in 5 years' time. The property on the right is another hotel that we bought up in Yorkshire, a place called Stokesley. And we met a vendor, as you often do, who was trying to sell a property. He wasn't desperate for the money. So Stephen was wealthy in his own right. He bought this property, this hotel, thinking that it was going to be easy to run, and found out it wasn't. And so he was one of those fortunate vendors that wasn't about to give the property away because he just wasn't wired that way. He was a creative entrepreneurial businessman, but he didn't really need the money. And everybody else tried to beat him down on price. This was £750,000, this property. And we said, look, Stephen, we'll pay you full asking price. We'll pay £750,000. And when you do that, and it's worth trying this, even if you don't necessarily follow through on it, in your next negotiation, just try this. Just try paying full asking price. Try offering full asking price. Because what happens to the vendors on the other side is they relax, and then the tension gets taken out of the negotiation. And then what you do is you negotiate on terms. So often terms are more valuable than price. Now, this hotel came to us at a time when we just recently bought another hotel. We weren't expecting to buy one so quickly, and we weren't particularly well funded. And so what we said to Stephen is, look, we'll buy your hotel, we'll pay you full asking price, but we want you to be our bank. We want you to lend us the money to buy your hotel. Now, you can still have bank level security, and we'll pay you a healthy interest rate on it. And he went for that because he wanted to sell his property. He got his full asking price, and then he also got a good interest rate on money that he would have just ordinarily sat in the bank. So it's not something that you do on every deal, but it is a tool that's worth having in your kit bag and knowing when to pull it out.
I've got a quick question, Nick.
Go for it.
You've just said something that's made me think. You asked the vendor in that deal to loan you the money to buy his hotel?
Yes.
How on earth did you do that?
Well, he didn't need the money. He was trying to sell the property. If we'd given him the cash for his property, he would have sat it in the bank earning 0.1% interest. We pay him 6% on his money. He's got bank level security on the property. So he just became a bank, and he gets a good return on his.
He loaned you the $750 to buy his house.
Yeah, he didn't loan us the full $750. He lent us, I think he lent us about $400,000. So like a bank would, so up to a certain level, and we put the rest of the money in. So he's got some security.
Yeah, I like that idea.
But this works where you meet vendors, because not every vendor that's selling a property is selling for the cash.
The money now, yes, it's true.
And this is where you need to understand people's motives for selling, because a lot of people are selling and they need the money, and so this strategy won't work. But as I said, it's a tool that's worth having in that kit bag every now and again.
I get it.
Comment there, someone stayed there, and yeah, it's a lovely little hotel. I think we've got 14 bedrooms there, and a great bar and restaurant, and a lovely outside area. So
there's a comment. Oh, right, brilliant. Yeah. Okay.
The next point is what I call the we question. So the we question is it's a way to tease out of estate agents more deals, because when you ask an estate agent, if you say to estate agents, look, I'm looking for 3-bedroom houses up to £150,000, they'll tell you the first one or two that immediately come to mind. They might search on their computer, but this works really well if you're taking them for lunch. And so what you do is you take them for lunch, and over the course of an hour, you ask them what else they've got. So we stands for what else. And you ask them what else they've got in lots of different ways. And again, this is worth an hour of your time to test it. And I'd love to hear feedback from people, because everybody that has tested it has said, yeah, that really works. And as I get better at this, I get more deals out of it. So you take Lisa out for lunch, Lisa, the estate agent, and you find out that Lisa's into horses, for instance. So you're chatting away and you're finding out about her business and you're integrating the conversation. We talk about horses. And then you say, Lisa, you know, you sent me that 3-bedroom house at 150 down on Acacia Avenue. What else have you got? And you wait for her to rack her brains, and then she might give you another sniff of a deal, and you make some notes, and then you do more talk about horses, and then you say, have you seen anything else recently like that property down at Acacia Avenue? And she'll rack again, and that'll trigger something else in her brain. And maybe she has, maybe she hasn't, and more talk of horses, more food, a little bit more wine. Do you have anything new coming to market yet? And more talk, and you're asking the same question but in a different way, and that's teasing this information out of her brain. And so, have you got anything complex? If you haven't seen anything yet, what are your appointments like for the coming weeks? And then you get the initial insight into what she's seeing in the next week or so, and you make a note in your diary. And if she's going to see something on another street that sounds like something's good on Wednesday, you ring her on Thursday and say, well, how was that deal? And this just teases information out of the agents, because they're not computers, they're not spreadsheets, they don't retain that much information, just as humans we don't. So where this question also works really well is if you want to find out why a vendor's really selling the property, if you've got the vendor on a viewing, ask them the same question 3 or 4 times. Why are you selling? And talk about the house. And as you move around the house, you ask the same question, but in a slightly different way. So why was it you said you were selling again? And then more questions, more talk about the house. So are you moving for financial reasons? And this is where you get to the truth, because as the rapport builds and as they become more comfortable, they'll give you the actual truth. You know, people don't purposefully lie in most cases, but they hold back, and it's things like that that allow you to find out why they're really selling, and then really go to work at solving their problems and finding more deals. Okay.
I like it. Very good.
My next point is about building systems. So building scalable, repeatable systems. And what I see a lot of is people chasing new deals all of the time. And I think that if you've seen a property, if you've filtered 10 or 20 properties and you've viewed 2 or 3 of them, and you've done the numbers and you've made offers on 3 or 4 of them, then you should follow those deals up until 1 of 3 things happen. You should follow the deal up until they tell you that it's sold and gone to someone else. They tell you that it's off the market, they're no longer selling anymore, or they tell you to stop bringing them, basically. Because if you've done the work, if you've put the effort in, if you've made an offer, you have to follow those up until it comes to a conclusion. And I guarantee that 1 in 10 of those deals will become a deal again if you follow it to a conclusion in that way. So I use a very simple spreadsheet. You can use a CRM system. A lot more people are more sophisticated than me, but just a very simple tracking sheet. Use Post-it notes if you want. I use Post-it notes for stuff. However you track it. But once you've found a deal, even though you made an offer and it might not have been accepted, follow it through to a conclusion and build that into a simple system. The other thing that I have in my phone is most people have in their iPhone or Android phone or whatever people use these days, they have a favorites phone list, and most people have their wife, their husband, their partner, their business partner, their mum, their daughter or son. I have estate agents in there, key agents who when I'm in the car and I've got some net time and I just want to have a conversation, I'll just track down those, and it just leaves it so that I don't have to remember, and I just go through them and I just ring them and say, how's it going? It's been a while since we spoke. Have you got anything else? This is what we're looking for. And the number of deals that I'm able to trawl, people that I already know, rather than trying to build new relationships all of the time, is massive. Okay,
Nick, I've got a question from one of the viewers who's watching.
Go for it.
Martin McManus has asked a question. What CRM software do you use?
We use Sage software, Sage CRM. It's a little bit overkill, to be honest, because we used to track a lot more in it. Sage it's quite difficult to use and it's customizable. There is a great piece of software which my wife, who's got a marketing agency, uses for a lot of her clients, and it's called One Page CRM, and it's as the name suggests, because most of these CRM systems have got all manner of bells and whistles that sound great when they're selling it to you, but it just becomes complicated and you don't use 90% of them. One Page CRM is probably good enough for this kind of thing.
Brilliant.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
The next point is about doing your laps. So laps is just a very simple sales technique that I learned a long time ago. And if you've decided, if you set yourself, whenever you set your goals of the 1st of January, that this year you want to buy 10 deals, setting yourself a goal to buy 10 deals is quite difficult to achieve unless you work back. And what laps is leads, appointments, presentations, or offers and sales. So to get 10 deals, you need to do so many offers. You need to do so many presentations. And to do so many presentations, you need to make so many appointments. And to make so many appointments, you need to do so many, you need to identify so many leads. Because you can't start at the bottom and work up, to start at the top and work down and know what those numbers are. So if you know, when we bought the 474 properties, I knew that we bought one property for 13 appointments that we made. Okay.
Wow.
Every 13 appointments that we made, we only got one deal. So I knew that if I wanted to buy 10 deals this month, I had to do about 130 appointments, which led to 100 offers, because by the time we're viewing a property, we're pretty sure it's going to work, but 3 out of 13 didn't for whatever reason. The agent's photographs weren't as we expected, or the property was next to a massive pylon, or the road noise was too much, or whatever. But you have to work from the top down. If you want to do 10 deals a month, you have to do 130 appointments a month, and that's worth tracking. And as you track it, you can then tweak it. You can tweak whether your offer letter needs to be improved. And again, it's another way just to do more deals rather than just leaving it to random nature.
I like that.
The next thing I want to talk about is clarifying your first filter. So there's a spreadsheet overlaid on this slide, and I've got a spreadsheet which I'm happy to share with you, Toyin, for anybody that wants them. Basic but very comprehensive spreadsheets that analyse buy-to-let properties, HMO properties, and development deals. I'm a bit of a spreadsheet geek, if you like. I've used Excel for over 20 years, and so I've built these very simple spreadsheets where you just fill in the yellow boxes and it will tell you whether it's a deal or not. But in order to filter more deals, you need to know what your first filter is. So when we were buying HMO properties, we knew that our first filter was we could pay £40,000 per lettable room, where the rates were £100 a week. If the rates were £200 a week, we could pay £80,000 per lettable room. And that allowed us to just look at lots more properties very quickly and filter them out either into the bin or onto the maybe pile. When we 174 buy-to-let properties, we knew that we needed 12% yield. Okay, so if the property was £100,000, we needed it to generate £12,000 gross yield. With hotels, again, we see pretty much every hotel that comes to market now, and we filter 99% of them in the bin, because we know that our first filter is we want 10% yield from that hotel. And that allows us just to ignore pretty much most hotels. And at the moment, it puts enough on the maybe pile that we then go and do more deals, that we then go and do more diligence, which leads to more deals. So you have to have a quick way of filtering off the bulk of properties that aren't going to work for you. And that's what I call the first filter.
I like that. My
next point in terms of doing more deals is learn to negotiate. So I would say, I'm not advocating any particular course or otherwise. There are a lot of property courses out there some of them run into 20 to 30,000 pounds. If you spent less than £1,000 with Cass Business School, one of the best business school in the world, people come from all over the world to attend this business school, but they do I think it's a 3-day negotiation course. They do a 1-day negotiation course. And if you spent less than £1,000 with Cass Business School, you'll get paid back 20, 30, 40, 50 times. Because if you do a little bit of basic negotiation or fairly advanced negotiation in the case of Cass Business School, you'll be within, I would say, the top 5% of negotiators, because most vendors aren't trained negotiators. Most estate agents haven't been on courses as good as Cass Business School, and it just allows you to negotiate better deals, to spot when a deal is likely to happen and which levers to pull and which levers to push. So again, having spent the time to find these deals, to set up viewings, to get to the point of negotiation, so many people fail because they don't have basic negotiation skills, and all of that effort prior to that is just wasted for not having some fairly basic negotiation skills. And the most powerful negotiations tool is silence. When you learn how to use silence in a negotiation, it can be astonishingly powerful. And in those minutes of silence, those seconds of silence, you can learn more about a person or a property deal than you can by asking 50 questions.
I like that.
Okay,
yeah, sure, brilliant.
My next point. Sorry, I'm rattling through this. Feel free to stop me at any time, Toyin.
No, I'm just taking it on in, and I know I've got some questions for some viewers. I'll be bringing them up as they come in.
I'm trying to pack as much into the time we've got because I appreciate people giving up their Sunday evening. So my next point is learn the key questions. So we talked about the we question. So what else? The next key question that I use a lot when I'm talking to estate agents is, am I missing something? Or vendors. So you'd never say to a vendor, or I certainly wouldn't say to a vendor, look, your property is listed at 300,000, but you must be mad, mate. It's only worth 260 at best, 250, because that's just going to put the barriers up. But what I might say is, look, the property is listed at 300,000, but the best I can get it to is 250, maybe 260. I can't quite understand why it's listed at 300,000. Am I missing something? And it's just a more gentler way of saying the same thing. And then am I missing something? This is part of the negotiation. You stay silent. And in those moments of silence, you learn usually what you're missing. Sometimes you're not missing anything, but sometimes you are. Sometimes they'll say, oh yeah, we've been saying that for ages, but my wife's just stuck on this £300,000 price, we've got planning permission to build another building in the garden and the estate agent's not listed that properly, or you might find out what you are actually missing if there is something there. And then the question is, at what price? So at what price does this work for you? So it's listed at 300, the best that we can get it to is 250, 260. At what price does it actually work for us to do a deal?
I like particularly what you just said, because what you're teaching me from listening is that the way you phrase your question can determine whether you get the deal or not. Because you can say the wrong thing and you also get the vendors back up. And this would ordinarily be a deal that is workable if you approach it in a softer way. So a lot of this, the silence thing you're just teaching us and the way you phrase your questions is really make a break, really, as far as doing negotiations, because then it's really, really important.
Yeah, and the key thing, by the time you get to this point, you've done most of the work in terms of the hours input. You've found the deal, you've got in your car, you've booked a viewing, you've got in the car, you've driven there, you've driven around the property, you've gone back to the office, you've done your numbers, and you're at this stage. And it's the last little bit, but it's so important. And if you can do twice as many deals from learning to negotiate and learning the key questions, and then you haven't done twice as much work because you're just closing more deals at the end. So that last little bit is so crucial. It's worth learning these things, and I'm a big fan of lifelong learning, and the negotiation stuff is something that I try and brush up on all of the time. The next point, which we've talked about, is about solving problems. So property is about people. It's not about bricks and mortar. It's about people, about solving their problems. So like we did for Mike in Darlington, the guy who bought this hotel and then had some health issues, we solved this problem. And in this problem, it gave us a deal. And so if you approach these deals, if you approach these people with, how can I serve? How can I solve this problem first? Once you've done that, how can I solve this problem in a way that also gives me a deal, rather than just what's in it for me, what's in it for me, what's in it for me? Because you'll do 10 times more deals if you approach it from that point of view. Obviously, the deals will be win-win. It has to work for you as well. Solve their problem first, and actually, in solving the problem, some of the stuff that we talked about before. You have to find out what their problem is first. So asking some of these questions, asking the what else question, why they're selling 2 or 3 times on the viewing, using silence, using negotiation tools, allows you to find out what their actual problem is. Because most people are guarded, especially if you're a stranger, which you often are when you go on a viewing. Most people are guarded about just spilling out what their real problem is. But once they share, if you're creative, then you'll do 10 times more deals by approaching it.
I like that.
The next point I want to talk about is leave an OBE, as I call it. So an OBE is an offer before exit, and we've got on the screen here a picture of Necker Island, which most people know is owned by Richard Branson. Now, when Branson bought this in the 70s, or when he first viewed it, he was trying to woo a lady. He was trying to woo his now wife, I believe, and so. He didn't really have any money, but he'd seen this island and he thought it'd be a really cool day to take his this girl that he was trying to woo to the island in a helicopter under the guise that he was going to buy it. Now, Necker Island was uninhabited, there was no services there, and it was on the market for $5 million. And Lord Hutton, who was selling it, had listed it for $5 million. Branson went to the island and looked around, fell in love with the place, and offered $100,000. Okay, and they kicked him off the island, and it was fairly embarrassing. But he left an OBE, left his offer before exit, and he said, "Look, I don't want to offend anyone, but the island's uninhabited. There's no services there. There's no buildings there. I'm not even sure what I could do with it. I don't know where you've got $5 million price tag from. I'm just going to leave my offer on the table." And there was some dialogue, kind of went silent. But over the next few months, Lord Hutton came back to the table, and they eventually agreed a price of $180,000. And Branson, by just leaving this offer on the table. And this is what I said earlier about once you get to the point of making offers, you can't make ridiculously stupid offers on everything. There was a reason why Branson made the offer he did, because the island's uninhabitable. I think the agent just put to figure out the air in the $5 million. But once you've got to the point of making an offer, if you think it's a genuine offer, you leave it on the table and you follow up until they tell you it's sold, they tell you it's not selling, or they tell you to politely or fairly rudely in some cases to stop calling them. And so, again, you've done the legwork at that point. So following up on those offers will lead you to more deals. So those were the 17 points on how to find more deals. They represent, I think, there's no rocket science in there, but if you practice some of those things and implement some of those things, none of them are difficult to implement, but they do take some discipline and some habit, if you like. But I guarantee you'll find more deals from doing that, and that's a lot of how I bought the 750 properties in 25 years.
I mean, it's just been a whole complete degree course just listening to this. This is absolute valuable content. And I think for those of you who are watching, I hope you were able to take down notes, and I will go back over the 17 points and try my best to implement them. It's been amazing. Now, for the benefit of those who wanted to reach out to you and get hold of you, how do they get hold of you? Do you run courses? Do you do seminars? Do you do coaching or mentoring? You know, do you have anything that you could tell us?
I don't do any of that, Toyin, I'm afraid. I'm primarily an investor myself. I pride myself on just trying to give value. I don't have anything to sell, but I'm keen to help as many people as possible. So they can find me on LinkedIn. My surname doesn't have an S in, so Carlile without an S. They can email me, nick@shepherdcox.com. I'm a little bit slow on getting back to people on emails, but I do get back to everybody eventually. And I do that genuinely to try and add as much value as possible to try and steer people away from traditional and move them into property to avoid what happened to my dad. And then somewhere along the way.
Hello, Nick. Let's see if I can get him back. Just bear with me. He'll be back in the broadcast one moment. Technology has its way of playing up.
Cut off. How far did I get? I was talking to myself.
I think it's been a fabulous interview with Nick. I hope I can get Nick back to conclude.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Nick Carlile, are you still with us?
Yes.
One more second and see if we get Nick back on.
Can you hear me?
Okay. My editor's saying no. Well, that I have to say must be the natural end to the interview with Nick Carlile. I think we've seen and we've heard what we needed to hear from Nick about how to find more property deals. I am really glad that we were able to broadcast you at least the benefit, the bulk of the conversation. And we were closing in any event, but for some miraculous reason, we've actually lost Nick at the point where he was about to give you his details and contact information. You can get hold of Nick via ourselves, Property Pillars, and I'm delighted to tell you that Nick is a contact of ours, and he's happy. I can hear him. Oh, you can hear him. One of the viewers says that we can't hear him here. Something has happened, but let me conclude and say that it's been a marvelous interview. An expert like Nick is invaluable for the benefit of those who watch the show regularly. I just wanted to say to you that we are going to start a Property Pillars investment club for those who are interested in becoming members of this club. Please send me an email, and it's free to become a member. You get the benefit of having access to these experts, whether it's via the show, whether it's coming to the Dine with the Expert event, a very successful opportunity for you to meet them and have dinner with them, or whether it's coming along with us on our first cruise in Western Mediterranean in May with some of these experts. The benefits of being a member are immense. We will be giving you details of that shortly, but for those who might want to be interested in coming on board with the WhatsApp group and being partakers of what Property Pillars are planning, send us an email or put the comments below with your contact details, and somebody in the office will get in touch with you to put you on the membership list. But thank you. This is the end of our episode. Our expert this evening was Nick Carlile. My name is Toyin Davidson-ero. I must conclude and say thank you, Nick, wherever you are. And I hope that next week you will join us again, another expert with another Property Pillars interview. And I so thank you. See you all next week, next Sunday, 8 p.m. Facebook Live. Until then, have a marvelous week. See you all. Bye-bye.